Wake up in the morning, get my grind on. Hop in the shower, brush my teeth and get my shine on. Hey, Scholar Mac, we taking trips to different time zones. I feel like E.T. way these bitches trying to follow home. Wake up in the morning, get my grind on.
Welcome everybody to Living on Purpose podcast. We're your host, James Hagler, and myself, Jason Wilson. Today we have Rachael Poffenroth. She's an ultra runner and inspiring speaker. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So Rachael, we love to talk about each other's life paths on this show. You have an interesting story already. I'm just, dying to hear it. How did you become an ultra runner though?
Ooh, I needed a break is honestly what it was. I had my third child was fairly colicky. And because there was a lot of tension in the house, I was with somebody who was not a really happy person at that time, who fathered her. And so I needed the break. I needed to get out of the house every once in a while. And I started, doing long walks and then got into the running. And I realized the clarity of my thoughts that came with that and the way that it helped to flush out so much of that pent up tension, because I was the kind of person who's very quiet and I'll store everything inside and I won't talk about it. So it was my way of getting things out. And then one of my friends, after I had just done a 20-kilometer race and got first in it, she's like, maybe you should try ultra running. And I hadn't even heard about that at that point. It was just I was running for the energy, just to get rid of that. And she invited me to do that. And I thought, well, if she can do it, I can probably do it. And then she told me that she did it when she was pregnant. I was like, well, then I definitely can do it if you can do it when you're pregnant. I had no idea that she was a superhero. And so I went out and raced that next year with them. And there was a whole group of us from the town that we lived in that went through this race. And I actually did really well, but I felt like garbage for pretty much the whole race. Like it's something that you can't prepare for until you've done it at least once. And I remember on the way home and I was like, right after the race, I said, I'm never doing it again. But 15 minutes before we got back to our place, I said, I know what I'm doing different next year. And everybody was just like, oh, mom, but that was it. I was hooked. And now it's my think time. It's my meditation time. I'm not a very good sitter. And because I'm on the computer so much, I need to be out and moving. And so that's just my morning clarity time. And I find that, people can get into their own meditative states whenever you're doing anything rhythmic, whether it's, walking, running, cycling, anything. We get into that metronome, tick tock kind of movement. And that releases the body to do what it wants to do while the mind can go through and process all the things that it needs to process.
Tell everybody, what is ultra running?
It's any distance that's longer than 50 kilometers, I believe is the general classification of it. But it can go up to 250 kilometers. And the ones that I do are generally in the mountains. I enjoy being out in nature. And so that's my training ground. And I'll, for a training run, I'll run 24 kilometers, which is 12 up and 12 down. Or it's sand dunes, or, I've done a lot of different ones. What's becoming a hot thing now is more of the experience runs. So, doing the trips. And so there's one in China that you can run the Great Wall of China and then through a bunch of villages. So it depends on what your flavor is, but it's definitely becoming more expansive in terms of what is actual ultra running. But yeah, that's the general consensus.
Wow, because I was just thinking what you said, that you have to go through it first to know how to get better at it. And you just gave me a good picture of that. And I would think so, because if you run up a hill, you don't know what the hill's going to give you. You don't know what you could do. And you just don't know until you go through it. And then when you go through it, like you said, I know what to do this time. Maybe I get some different shoes. Maybe I'll learn how to do some different exercises and in that way.
Oh yeah, it's totally that. It's absolutely everything. They say that to win a race is making a lot of the right decisions at the right time. And so it's absolutely everything. That whole next year, I learned how to just turned my body into a giant science experiment, right? It was like, how far can I go without eating? Because I don't eat and run very well. Usually when I'm running, I'll run fasted for my training runs. So I won't even have eaten from the night before. And so if I'm running at 11 o'clock, it's, 18, 20 hours since I ate last, because I prefer to do that. I don't believe that our bodies are, equipped to digest food or large volumes of food and also perform at that high level.
I was the same way.
Yeah.
When I was boxing, I couldn't. My dad's the same way. Couldn't eat No, my uncle was the same way. Couldn't eat before like, all right, you go to weigh in. You might weigh in. Back in the day, they weigh in like at 6 in the morning, or
Yep.
6 or really early in the morning. Then you fight late at night. And my uncle and I was the same way. I couldn't do that. I would have to eat like the day before, real heavy, and just drink some fluids and stuff to keep hydrated.
Yeah.
And then fight. Because other than that, after that, if I didn't, I was throwing up and hot flashes and the whole nine. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. And that's exactly what ultra running is, right? You're out there trying to figure out what works with your body, and everybody's different. Some people do need fuel. I won't eat until I'm hit at least the 18-kilometer mark, and then I'll start snacking on some things. But it's still, I will probably only take in about 300 calories during the whole race. Whereas some people will put in, 1,500 calories because that's what they've trained their bodies to do. So it's just you're playing with what your body wants to do and then trying to get the ultimate performance out of that.
Okay, so for an ultra runner, what's your diet like? Do you eat meat? Are you a vegetarian? What do you do?
I have an interesting story actually around that. I have gone through a lot of health issues. It seems like that seems to be the weakest point, when we always have something that's a struggle for us. And when I get stressed, then my body internalizes that and will show up in some way. And so I've become like a lab rat for my own self to figure out what works and what doesn't. And because of that, I've done all kinds of diets. I've done 100 days of just raw food. And I didn't find that worked out really well for me for the fuel I needed for running. However, it's good for training. Or, I tried the keto diet, which also is not amazing if you want to be an endurance runner, because you require so much more oxygen to digest the fats. And so when you're cruising up these hills, you have a 40% less oxygen capacity, right? And so you're in a deficit when you're running up those, and then you throw keto into the mix. I mean, now you're really struggling. So I tried that once 1 year, and I won't advise that. As far as personally, if you eat what you really want to eat first thing in the morning and you get it all the way, you really don't crave it for the rest of the day. So rather than having that mental battle of don't eat this and eat that, I just make a healthy version of chocolate, which has all the greens and all my superfoods and absolutely everything that I need to superpower me through my day. And that's my breakfast, which, I do intermittent fasting. So I eat that around noon, and then I just won't eat again until dinner. And then it's usually a salad with a lot of fats. And because my family likes to eat meat, the odd time, I might put a little bit on my food, but generally, no, I'm not a meat person, although there's lots who are. And I'm also not a big carb person, except for sweet potatoes. I love those. But other than that, I don't crave carbs. If I'm really craving something, it's like a banana or something like that.
Okay.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. The reason why I ask is because I follow people like David Goggins. And this guy, he runs ultra races too, and a lot of other kinds of races, but he doesn't really go into his diet too much. We see him strength train and that type of thing, but do you strength train as well for your?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. In the winter time is when I do a lot of my strength training and a lot of that cross training stuff, where I'll do a lot more Pilates and yoga and, just try and be more well-rounded, round myself back out. And then once spring hits, it's just almost all running and biking. I will cross train with the biking, but other than that, I don't really make anything else a priority. So it's, winter time, which here seems to be about 8 months, is strength training. Yeah, I'm big on that. I'm really big on core, and I'm really big on stretching and ensuring that flexibility is there so that I don't become injured during the season.
What about plant-based?
Yeah, that's mostly what I am. I don't I don't enjoy meat, and I think that's just a personal preference thing, but I also find after doing it for so long, I've noticed that I can tell how long it takes to digest stuff in my stomach, and I just don't like that heavy feeling or waking up the next morning to a heavy feeling. I just want to feel light, and so that's why I really like my salads at dinner time, or a smoothie or something like that, just so I know it's digested by the time I wake up and ready to go again.
Right, because I was wondering, you ever seen this documentary? It was on Netflix called Game Changers. He was talking about plant-based foods, and I guess one of the guys, I think he broke the record for ultra running.
Yeah.
So I think he did like so many hours. He said he had a lot more energy. He was, that's how he broke the record, was because of his diet. He changed his diet, and a lot of those athletes they had in this documentary were the same way. They changed their diet and they felt a whole lot better. It was just easier for your blood to move through your veins.
Yeah. And, that's honestly, most people don't realize it, but it's actually a big concern is your heart or your blood viscosity and how it goes through your heart. And there are runners who die every year on the course running. And I don't know if they've attributed it specifically to their diet or to breathing or, what it is, because it just seems to be random. They haven't been able to connect those dots yet, but it is a real thing. And pulmonary embolism and, all these different heart conditions that seem to show up during a race. It's real. And so they do recommend that we get checked, every year, every couple of years, as far as making sure that your heart is strong. You assume as a runner, your heart should be strong, but we are pushing it to that point of, beyond what the heart sometimes wants to do, especially if you're doing a lot of it, or if you're living a stressful life and you're still trying to do that as well. It's a lot of taxing on the body.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Were you an athlete in school, Rachael?
I was a cheerleader.
Okay.
I did a little bit of everything. I did, I played volleyball, I played basketball. I'm not really tall, so I was point. And I did track. I loved track. But I didn't do the long distance stuff. It really wasn't a thing until I became a mom, and then I needed my escape. And then it became something that I loved.
He was already an athlete, so that helped big time,
It did. Yeah. And I was raised that way. My dad raised us, he was a single father, and he was incredibly active. And Sunday afternoons we'd be out hiking or throwing basketballs or, we were always doing something. And that's the same way I've raised my kids, is we're always out rollerblading or riding bikes, or, I honestly believe that kids do not listen to a word that you say, but they watch everything that you do. And so it is so important that my kids are at the end of the race every single time I finish one for me.
No doubt. Well, you're kind of like my dad in a sense, because he always had to have my mother at the fight, man. I mean, if she wasn't there, it was a problem.
Yeah.
She used to have to make sure that she was there. She used to get so nervous before the fights, and she always did this. I don't know. I didn't think she did it on purpose, but it just happened. She would always leave the flight tickets at the house. We already to the airport, ready to go. We damn near there at the airport. Then she remembers, I left the ticket. All the time. We had to send somebody back to get the tickets to come. That was just something that she did. She was so nervous,
Wow.
But he had to have her there. I remember he told me that. He said, "Yeah, your mother got to be there. I got to be able to see her in the front row." And that's every fight.
Yep. Yeah, it's big. And I totally understand that. And for me, it's just, I want to inspire my kids to, whatever it is, go after it wholeheartedly and don't put rules on it. Like, it doesn't matter my age. And I tell them that all the time because they, joke about how, Mom, you're getting old. And I was like, well, until you can outrun me, I'm not old. And so that's kind of our standing joke, right? Is they need to get a little bit faster and be able to run a little bit longer, which, none of them are. I don't have a single runner, actually.
Yeah, but you might be surprised. You never know, because that running, you could you can just turn on at any point,
It does. Yeah. I have a hockey player. I've got a rugby player. I've got a gymnast, and the youngest one, well, she hasn't really figured out what her thing is yet, but she'll find it.
No doubt. Because my son, My son is a runner. He ran because that's how he got his frustration out.
Yep.
And I think he ran the 100, and he almost made the Olympics. But I think he blew his knee out, and after that we had a lot of issues with him, and then he was coming into his late teens, and we started having issues with him because he wasn't able to get out and run like he wanted to, and that was an outlet for him. And
yes.
We talk about it now, and he has his son running and stuff like that, but he still gets out there and runs a little bit. But I told him, I said, you should do it more now. That's what you was doing to get rid of your anger before. Now why stop? He's just like, yeah. But I think it really bothered him that he wasn't able to move forward with it, because that was something that he really loved. I mean, he wasn't the same after he couldn't run anymore.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I think about that all the time, because I've had a few friends that have had to back off of it for health reasons, or, whatever's going on in the world. And I just can't imagine.
Rachael, I was really interested in having you on our show because I love your videos on YouTube.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
I love those. What inspired you to become a speaker?
I believe that my mission here on this earth during this lifetime is to be a lighthouse to help people discover the truth of who they are. So that's what the focus of all of what I'm sharing, whether it's on YouTube or on my Instagram reels or whatever, is just reminding people of who they are and how magnificent they are, because so much of society puts us into boxes where we become so conditioned to be like everybody else, and we lose ourselves. And so we also lose our spark and our magnificence, and we lose touch with the thing that makes you unique and makes you you. And we start to believe that our value is only being able to produce results in the same way that anybody else can. So that's my big theme, is just to reignite that in people, awake that up in people again, to say, hey, listen, you, just as you are, without anything, without having to prove or perform, you're just absolutely magnificent as you are.
That's phenomenal.
It comes out of a journey, right? That was my journey, was rediscovering that. And once I did, it was just like, I said, to so many of my friends, I just want to bottle this up and give it to people so they can just kind of taste what it feels like to live this life, because it's so exciting. And every day I wake up excited to be alive. And I didn't always. But now that I am living my life according to my terms, and I've discovered what my value is, and I'm able to radiate that out to the world, I love every minute of my life.
I can relate to you, because I'm feeling like that now with my life, and when you're in that rut, or when you're in that funk, it's kind of depressing. It's sad. It's really sad. And then when you stop, like you say, when you start finding light, you start getting excited, because I would say, well, I kind of lost my swag and this and that, and I didn't realize what it was. I didn't know where to go, to talk to somebody or even to get help. Now I'm here at a certain point in my life, and I'm like, I just feel very alive, and I love what I'm doing, and it just feels good to be back.
And it's amazing, right? When you touch in with that, when you reconnect to that inner spark, all of your cells wake up. Everything inside of you wakes up, and your life takes on a whole new color and a whole new feel and a whole new vibe. And you genuinely do want other people to experience it and to have that opportunity to also become that for themselves, right? And I can see that, that's what your guys' podcast is called, is living on purpose. And once you find it, oh man, life is completely different. You're no longer, walking around in the dark trying to feel your way through. Now you see it.
Right. Exactly. And I was there in that place for a long time. I don't never want to go back. Never.
So Rachael, you said that you pretty much getting away from working with people individually, and you're working with groups now. What kinds of things do you teach in your groups?
Yeah, so now I'm moving into a totally new realm, and I feel it's exciting. I'm always trying to push the boundary on what everybody else is doing or what we're ready for collectively. And so when I look at the state of the world and, the things that are going on and the things that are concerning people and where they're starting to lose faith, and where they're starting to look for answers, and also aligning with my theme of returning people back to the truth of who they are, to what is your internal power. Now I'm moving into a whole new world of helping people discover, starting with intuition, accessing your intuitive guidance, and then taking it to another step of teaching, telekinesis, which isn't really, it seems really out there, but it's just something that was taught out of us. We all have access to it. It's not a special gift. So telekinesis and remote viewing and the ability to take on other people's energy and to work with that, and then also to release it, like all of those different aspects. We have these abilities within us, but we're so conditioned to believe that we just are here to produce, to pump out results, to show up every day, to perform, and to do the same as what anybody else is doing. And I feel that my highest service is to remind people of how powerful they are and to remind them of what you have within you. And, I think about all the time, what kind of a world, even if I could do this for the next 20 years, what kind of a world could that breed for the next generation? Because they're always using us like a totem pole, right? As there's layers going up and we become the stepping stones for what they're able to create. So if I can push the boundaries a little bit on what we're ready for collectively, then my kids or my grandson can push it a little bit further, right? They can just keep on carrying that torch into a place where we are returning back to owning and accepting all aspects of us, not just the stuff that seems to be safe or acceptable within our tribes.
Okay, so I know what telekinesis is, but what is remote viewing?
Remote viewing is you're taking on an energy of somebody else and you're able to see what they're experiencing in that moment. And so one way, like when we teach it, we'll go through a series of connecting with that, the different energies, and then somebody will go outside and be touching something, and the people who are inside will be recording what they're sensing. So that person outside could be on the playground touching a swing and then moving over to the climbing center or something like that. And so then the kids will be usually drawing it or sensing different things in that.
Interesting. We said that at the same time, James. Okay. So, I know that Native American people, they're very in tune to telekinesis and, as you mentioned, remote viewing and other kinds of psychic powers. Where do you learn how to do this? If you're interested in like teaching it?
It's pretty hard to find somebody at this point. There's shamans that teach it. I teach it. There's a few other groups, and mostly they're in the European area because they seem to be a little bit further ahead than we are here. And right now, there's only, honestly, like 6 groups that I know of that are actively teaching it or coaching it. And the reason I'm starting to work more with kids and in small groups is just because it takes a whole, rewiring of what's available to us, because we're so conditioned to think inside very particular boxes, and anything outside that box is weird, and your rational brain just rejects it and it won't even accept it. And so you have to kind of go through a process of noticing that the rational brain only speaks in language, whereas your intuitive brain will speak in symbols and textures and colors. And so that part of your brain has atrophied so much because of a lack of use. And so it's kind of like a muscle. And we'll usually do, a 3-day, 5-day, or 7-day. And then they can go deeper and deeper and deeper into those skills.
Okay. So once you learn these intuitive skills, like what would that give you an advantage of doing in everyday life?
Oh, I think it opens up a whole new world. I mean, now you have access to intuitive guidance, and you're now like, for me, one of the things that we teach is that we are surrounded by a field of possibilities. So if we look at our world, this is one of the first things that we do, is look at your world, and what you see around you, you're completely surrounded with space, even though it seems like there's a lot of things, right? You're looking around your house or your office or even your car. We identify with our cars, but when you're sitting in your car, there's actually space within your car. And then if you want to go, full on into the physics of it all, even within that, it's still 99.9% space, even within the material of, the makeup of your vehicle or your makeup of your house. It's still the space that it would take for you, if you were condensed, all of you, into full on matter, you'd be like the size of a piece of dust, right? So we are so much space within the confines of what we believe is us, our structure. And so when you start noticing around you is all this space, and then you start seeing everything around you includes a web of connectivity, of options, of possibilities, of potential, like it's unused energy. And that was one thing that in the 1800s that Tesla discovered, right, was that 0 point, the free energy. And so we're doing the same thing, but we're using it in our lives, and we're noticing how people then become excited because now they're not confined to their lives of limits anymore, but they're starting to see what is available. And so they stop going, this is a pattern that people fall into, is they think, well, so-and-so has already created this and this person's already invented that. So what's left is there for me, to do in this world? How can I have an impact?
Right. And if you thought of it, somebody else thought of it.
Yeah, exactly. And when you touch into that and you just realize the vastness of what surrounds you, that's like, we've barely touched the surface on what is possible. So let's start playing with what is possible so that our brain can start connecting different dots other than what we've been habitually creating. And so then that's where that world opens up to people go, okay, well, I love doing this and this and this. I'm going to try and put them together in a course or in a retreat, or I'm going to teach this to kids, or, all of a sudden they start getting excited about possibilities. Whereas before they would have talked themselves out of it because it didn't fit in that, human box of what everybody else was doing. And that's the thing. We want to stay in our box, but at the same time, we want to break out of it. But when we play with it, these energies a little bit and realize what's available, then we start, it's almost like an invitation to go into places where we didn't feel safe being before, and we feel more open and expansive even in our mind. And when you can create that space in your mind away from the chaos and the clutter and all the thoughts, then all this new information can come in. And so that's where it becomes applicable, is people be able to go, okay, there is something that's been waiting for me and I just haven't been paying attention to it.
No doubt. I can relate to you in this in a sense, because if you look at some of these successful people and how you wonder, like with Master P, how you get that deal? Because they was telling him, you will not get this deal. You can't, this is not going to happen. Master P didn't listen to that. He had a thought in his head, like you said, and he went after it. He didn't let anybody kill his dream. Same thing with 50 Cent. He look what he did. You know, and he, like you said, he's connecting those dots, and I'm learning from these guys, and I'm seeing, because I was getting discouraged in some of the things, some of the endeavors that I wanted to do, and a lot of people are telling me, "Well, James, I don't know if you could do it like that. This is the way it goes," and I'm like, "Wait a minute! If Master P and these guys can do what they want to do, then I could do what I want to do. I can do this show this event that I'm doing." This is what I wanted to do, just like this. I don't care who did this. I don't care who did that. But this is exactly what I want to do. And I know that it can happen.
Yes.
I know it can happen. As long as I keep pushing and keep staying and making progress and keep working towards it, it's going to go. It's just like you said, it's too big. It's too big for it not to succeed, or not to find the right connection, or not to find the right people, or not, it's like music, like they say about music. You could come out with a song saying TikTok, TikTok, and somebody's gonna like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And we see that, right? The super geniuses that we say, oh, they must be so gifted or whatever.
Right,
they must have been born with a silver spoon, like Richard Branson or Elon Musk or, Oprah. But no, they just connected to that field of possibilities and then they just played in it. And
right,
so
just,
that's
no
what we're
doubt.
trying to do, is cultivate that plainness, that playfulness, right?
Just like my dad, he wanted to be champion of the world. They didn't want him to be champion of the world. They threw all kinds of roadblocks and walls in front of him, and he just kept sticking right to it. I was raised like that. I seen it done. I seen how you do. And for him, somebody would have just quit. A lot of people would have just quit. Oh, I can't do it, or they're not gonna give me a shot. And I got too many obstacles. But he showed me, you just keep doing it. Just keep going and be successful. Be successful at everything. And every step you take is a calculated step. You know what I mean? So
It is.
you have to make sure that you stay right on your path. Don't veer off. There's no shortcut.
Yeah. And what people do is they get into the judgment of, well, I'm not there yet and I haven't done that yet, so that must not be in the cards for me. But if you look at some of the greats, like a lot of them didn't start till they're in their 40s or 50s, right? Sometimes it takes you a while to finally get to that point where you're ready to follow it, even though it's been calling you the whole time. And I see life kind of like those kaleidoscopes that we used to have, and you look through it and you just turn it just a quarter of a crank, and it would create a completely different picture. And that's how I see our lives, is we take one step forward and all of a sudden you see a completely different picture. And that was born actually that realization was born out of an ultra marathon I did a couple of years ago, where there was no path. We were running on private lands in sand dunes. And they had never ever had a race out there before, and because it was sand dunes, you didn't have sheep trails or deer trails or whatever animal trails to follow. And because I'm a front runner, I'm one of the ones at the front of the pack, I didn't have anybody else even to follow. And so what they had was flags that were about this big, pink and white ones, out on the course to tell you where the next place was to go. And so they were sometimes 60 feet apart and sometimes they're 100 feet apart, and you're running, and the whole time you have to be completely present, because they just gave us the 50 ways to die, because there's snakes and there's cactuses and there's sinkholes and there's all kinds of stuff you have to be very aware of. Right. But at the same time, you're also looking for, where am I going next? And I remember finishing that race and having so much energy at the end of it, and I was like, why this race is the same distance as what I usually run. Is this my training? Is it the way I feel? Then it was like, no, I was just present. I was 100% aware every single minute of this race. And I was always watching for the next flag. And so then from that race, I began living my life that way. Instead of, my old, very A-type personality is to know the whole thing. If I can't see the whole chess game, I'm not moving, right? That was me before. Right. But now it's just, if I can see one flag, and then I know that from when I get to that flag, the perspective is going to open up and I'm going to see the next flag and then the next flag. And sometimes it's not where you thought it was supposed to be, and you got to pivot real quick to get to where that flag is. And so if we live our lives in that way of just being able to see one, maybe two flags ahead, and every time we get there, we have a new vantage point of what is available to us. Just like that kaleidoscope, the picture changes slightly, the view changes slightly, and then you find what is the next best step for you. And so, for me, that's now my mission, is if I see 2 or 3 steps in a row, I know I'm starting to get back into my head. And it's like, no, go back into your heart, follow that, whatever it is that's lighting you up, and keep on following that excitement, because that's what's going to lead me to my most fulfilling life, rather than living a life that's well calculated or well structured, or, according to all the shoulds that are surrounding us all the time.
No, so it's like it's something similar to, you got to see the end game. You have to see the end game, and you got to look past where you at, where you at what you're doing, for me is promoting and putting on my event. So I'm like, I could see the end game. I could see it all going well, and everybody smiling at the end, and we're on to the next one. It's patience. You got to have that patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one.
But this one is for me though. I have this big dream for business too, and I'm in a position now where God was like, okay, if you support James with his thing, then you'll be supported with your thing. So, a lot of times in life, we don't realize it, but the thing that we want to receive, we have to give.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Law of the universe. That is one of the mightiest laws of the universe, is that what we give out is what we'll receive back. And, when we go into that world where people believe that there is such a thing as lack or scarcity, it's, I always say, well, look at what you're giving out. You're going to always get back 100% of what you give out. So if you believe, though, that you're only deserving of, or you're holding back, or you're resenting giving, and so you're only generous 10%, well, yeah, you're only going to get back that 10% that you gave out, because that's all you gave with that generous spirit. And so there really is no such thing as lack. You get 100% of what of what you're sending out. And so when we're looking at it that way, we start to become, open to what can I give, not so that what can I receive. It's just because it feels good to give, right? It feels good to help people. It feels good to be in that atmosphere of working together collaboratively. And we can do more together anyways than we can ever do alone.
When I ended up going to jail because I had the DUI, I ended up doing a year. And that's where I learned my patience, because I had to wait. I wasn't going nowhere. I couldn't do anything that I wanted to do. So that's why I learned my patience. And from that point on, I learned a lot from being in there. And from that day on, I was good. I was good. I know how to patience now. Like you said, drop the seed in the soil, you put the water on it, put it in a windowsill, and walk away, and just do it again the next day. And make sure it has its water, nurture it, make sure it has its water, and grow. And my mother told me, she said, "This is how you know a girl's for you." I said, "How's that?" She said, "Give her a plant and see if she takes care of that plant."
Mm-hmm.
Take care of that plant, then you all right. So, okay.
Yep. And I've heard that.
Right. But what it was is I forgot the type of plant it is. I know it's long, skinny, sometimes has purple leaves on it. It's a very delicate plant. You have to nurture that plant. You have to make sure it has its water and its sun, and you have to really take care of it. If not, it'll die. And that's the plant. She said, give your girlfriend this plant here and see if she take care of it. And don't tell her nothing about nothing. Just say, hey, it's a good gift and blah, blah, blah. And watch to see if she can take care of it. She can't take it if the plant died. She can't take care of you.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and that's so important too, right? About the plants analogy. And the problem is people get so hung up on planting one seed. And like you mentioned, you plant one seed and the next day you plant another seed, and the next day you plant another seed. And if we only plant one seed, we're going to be obsessed about how that one is germinating and growing. And we're going to be, stalking it and driving it crazy and not allowing it to have what it needs. But if you keep planting seeds and your energy is on continuously planting the seeds, it's not on obsessing about how your seeds are doing. And then all of a sudden you turn around and you go like, oh, wow, look at this. I've got a garden.
Right. Because all the seeds grow at different pace.
Yes.
You look at one seed like, wow, it did that big. This one, wow, this one's not doing wow. Okay. It keeps your mind occupied.
Well, and it's the conditions, right? It's always the conditions of the environment that help it to grow. And it's the same thing in our lives. Sometimes there are conditions that are conducive to growth, and sometimes there's conditions that are like up here it's fall, or when it's fall, it's time for the leaves to drop and it's time for things to go more into hibernation mode. And it just depends on what are the conditions that are present. Like there's actually it's on my bucket list to do this year. There's a cave that you have to rappel down into. And it's up here in Canada in a very snowy, high elevation region. But once you rappel down into it, all of the plants and insects within there are like they're from a tropical environment. So the way that the sun shines in there, it magnifies it and it activates all of the potential that's sitting in there, and it helps these seeds and stuff to grow in a way that it would grow if it was in a tropical climate. So I think when I learned about that, I thought, oh, it's so fascinating. And that's what really got me onto that world of everything is available to us at all times. What are you going to do with the opportunity? Because it's always available to us. It's always exists.
Rachel, this has been a wonderful show. We have to have you back. We would love you. We would love a part 2. Is there a final thought that you would like to leave our guests?
The most important thought, I believe, for everybody to know, whether you're struggling or you feel like you're starting to figure out where your life is headed, is just know that you are important. You're important to what is to come, and you are important to what is here. We all bring an energetic imprint, and it is conducive to creating what is going to be the future. And so just you being here is important. And if you wasn't important, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have been born at this time. You would have been born at a different time or in a different place. But the fact that you're here means that you are needed and that you are valuable.
Awesome. I know our guests are going to love this show. Rachael, how can people find you on social media?
Social media is just my name. I'm hoping you're going to put the stuff in the show links, because it's Rachael Poffenroth, which is kind of tricky to spell, but it's phonetic. So on Instagram, it's Rachael Poffenroth. If people like high vibe reels, I'm regularly posting stuff to remind people of their magnificence. And then same with on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever your flavor is of getting in contact with me. I am a little bit here and everywhere.
Great. And what is your website?
Same thing, RachelPoffenroth.com. And there's free resources. There is a self-love 5-day challenge with a guided meditation. There's all kinds of stuff to help people, especially people who are struggling with mental health, because I've been there. And so I've written it all from that perspective of going back into that place where, what would I have needed to hear to help me get to the next place?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachael, for being on our show.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you for watching Living on Purpose podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel.